Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Dharma Junkie Podcast. As always, I am Justin Otto, your host. I just wanted to start this episode by saying that I lost a really good friend of mine last week. Gail, I love you, and this episode is for you. I think you would have liked it. So for 50 years, Indra Rinzler has been involved in spirituality and Vedic astrology. He's been studying and sharing Enneagram of Personality since 1999, and he uses these modalities in life readings designed to help his clients wake up to who they really are. He's an enthusiastic dude, and he's just a really genuine guy who's been a world traveler for over 20 years, and he offers sessions in both the US and in Asia. We had a really good talk about Vedic astrology. I learned a lot, and it was just a really fun episode to make. But without further ado, Indra Rinzler.
You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state. Just relax and enjoy it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. Using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
Indra Rinzler, what's up, man?
It's Friday. Oh no, it's Thursday here. That's what's up. The sun is up now.
Where exactly are you located?
I'm in Northern California. We had rain last night, and now the sun is out. It's glorious.
Right on. Yeah, NorCal is beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful country up there. I love it. Big Sur is one of my favorite places in the country. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where you're in relation to that.
I'm in the foothills between Sacramento and Tahoe.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's
gold country, we call it.
Yeah, for sure. Prospector land.
Yeah.
49er territory. Right on, man. Well, I'm glad the rain cleared up at least. At least you're having a nice day now. Nice and sunny out. That's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't get enough rain, so it's okay if it wants to rain more. That's okay. It's a good thing. Rain is neither bad nor good, but it's a good thing if you don't have much. So,
yeah, absolutely. You guys definitely don't get enough rain up there. That's one thing I'm constantly noticing is it's like California's just always on fire. It's just perpetually on fire. It's like I don't think they ever actually get them put out until, and then another one just starts up. I don't think they're ever actually fully out, though, are they?
Well, in Northern California, it's pretty wet here. It's not rain season now, but Southern California can have the drying winds and can still get rain. I don't know, maybe into January. I have no idea, but yeah, it can be a bit of a problem. Just to take it to a higher level, the fact is that we don't know why anything happens and why we are in dry, and maybe it's climate and maybe it's something else. And the fact is that this plane here is a learning school. This is not the reward planet. This is not the beautiful. While it's beautiful here,
right.
People don't come here as a reward because the life is hard. The being in a body is suffering, and so you have to learn to roll with the punches. And sure, it's nasty in fire season, and people are. We had a friend. My wife has a friend, and she says, "Oh, I'm worried about the fires because it hasn't rained in a month." And it's like, "Oh, but this is the non-rainy season. This is the time when we don't have to worry about it." That would be my choice. Is if I'm going to worry, I want to do it in season. But to worry out of season, I don't need to take that on. But the point is that whatever happens here, I think of it as as lessons for us to learn, that how we react to good stuff, how we react to bad stuff, it all gives us opportunity to grow. And I think that's what this place is about. It's not necessarily about having the most beautiful life and having all your physical plane rewards, because the problem with physical plane rewards is that you keep wanting your TV to be bigger, and you keep wanting, they asked years ago, they did a survey and they asked everybody, how much money would you like to earn? And everybody, no matter what level, said 10% higher.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more. Yeah, the point being is that we have to learn to find satisfaction within inside ourselves, not in terms of what we get or what we achieve, because those things are temporary. What lasts? What is the satisfaction that lasts? The satisfaction that lasts is the simple joy of God's presence, and it doesn't have to be a man on a throne God when I say that. Nature's presence, right. The moment, you go to the Grand Canyon, your first look, you never forget that.
That's what I hear. I've yet to go myself, but that is what I hear. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. As long as you look for happiness in worldly things, you open yourself up to suffering, because everything of the world is impermanent. So,
absolutely,
any happiness you derive from impermanence, obviously can be taken away. So you have to, as you were saying, look within yourself for that. And for me, I find that, through spiritual practices myself. I'm for lack of a better term, a practicing Buddhist myself. So, and that's
beautiful.
That's where I get, my sense of spirituality from. And because that's where like I said, if you want everlasting happiness, get it from something unworldly, because worldly shit's going to go away. It's going to go away whether you want it to or you don't. It's just, that is the nature of things.
And that is perhaps the lesson, is the temporalness of the material things is the lesson that we can learn.
Right. Well, it seems like you've learned that lesson.
Well, I would say that I know that lesson. That doesn't mean that I've learned it all.
Practice it all the time, 100%.
I like to say that between, when you're talking about your team, winning is a lot better than losing.
Right. And that's not to say that, I don't still attain joy from, worldly pleasures and stuff, and I think that's an important thing, especially with the Buddhist path, is like, it's not about, extreme gluttony or extreme asceticism. It's, it's the middle path. So it's like not too much of one or too much of the other, but it's recognizing that too much of either of those things is not going to be beneficial for you. Whether you're, it's depriving yourself to an extreme point or overindulgence to an extreme point, either of those on the scale are going to cause it to tip one way or the other. Whereas like, you want to be kind of like right in the middle, at least for me. That's how, that's how I try to approach my life in general. And it seems to work, for the most part. I mean, as we were saying, not 100% of the time. I don't think anybody's going to, 100%.
The path of moderation is a beautiful path.
That's it, man. Moderation. What a notion. So when did you start on your spiritual path? When did you decide when did you get your, like I said, lack of a better term, awakening, or, at least a nudge in that direction?
Well, I awakening, I don't think was at the beginning. I mean, maybe it was a level of awakening, but,
right. Yeah.
When I moved to California in the early 70s, I started, there was a bookstores in Berkeley with spiritual books. And so I had an opportunity to buy these books, and I could go in and just indulge something that I hadn't really known anything about. I started reading astrology back then too, so 50 years ago. And so one of the books I found fairly early on was Autobiography of Yogi, if you're familiar with that, Paramahansa Yogananda.
I'm not. But
okay,
so have to look into that.
So Autobiography of Yogi, perhaps it's the, Be Here Now, Ram Dass, which was released in the early 70s. Yogananda released this book in 1946. He was the first Indian master to live in the U.S., not to visit the U.S. That was Vivekananda in 1890, but the first Indian master to live in the U.S. And he wrote an autobiography that he said that he really spent a lot of time putting his spiritual vibration into the book, and there are a spiritual energy at a high level. You can feel it, when you walk into a temple in India. It doesn't have to be India. When you talk about Buddhists, we spent a month at Bodh Gaya, where Buddha found enlightenment, and which is a fabulous place. I've been there a couple of times.
That's
and it's interesting.
That's right outside of Varanasi, right?
Yeah, well, it's 5 hours away, but yeah, right outside.
In relation, we're talking about India. It's a pretty big place.
Yeah, it's about 250 kilometers. It's a long trip to get there, but yeah, it's right outside. That's right. That's the place. And so the thing is that it's probably not the place where it's not the Bodhi tree, the tree where he found enlightenment. That's not the tree that's there. It's a cousin, it's a descendant of that tree, and it's probably not the real place. But people have been coming there for over 2,000 years, and it doesn't really matter that it's not the right place anymore, because it has so much spiritual vibration. And so this particular book is probably more seekers have read this book, and it started more seekers than any other book. Anyways, I found this book in 1972, and by 75 I was taken discipleship and been on that path on and off, in a sense, for 45 years. I lived in a spiritual community for 20 years, devoted to this Paramahansa Yogananda. And then I separated from my wife, and my kids were grown. And I started traveling. I became a world traveler, and kind of at 50 reinvented myself. And that's when my path deepened from those experiences. I had some awakening experiences since then, but it's been 50 years. And I like to say, as an old guy, I like to say that we old guys, we realize that we don't really know very much. That there's an idea around in the 60s that you start realizing that you don't have to know everything, that your ego doesn't need for you to be a quote unquote expert. And the fact is, you realize that every year that you know less and less, and you're very happy with that. It's kind of a Buddhist concept.
Yeah, that's one thing that I have started noticing more and more recently, is that I don't know anything. But just as you said, I'm happy to come to that realization, but because it's like, oh, well, I still have things to learn then. It's like, oh, I can continue learning forever, because there's always something that I'm not going to know. And I claim to be an expert in nothing other than just being myself. That's all I can be an expert in, is just being who I am. And even that, I'm probably not an expert at just yet, but we're feeling it out. So you've traveled pretty extensively, huh?
Yeah. So in 99, when this happened, I started traveling, and I've had an opportunity to be, actually, before COVID, I'd only been in the US one winter since 1998.
Oh, wow.
And I did an import business for 12 years. That was actually, I had run a store, and I kind of wanted to get back to that. And so I did importing. And so I had a chance to travel everywhere. I've been to 56 countries. I would go to third world countries where everywhere I could find that they had handicrafts, which is what I was buying, jewelry, singing bowls, hemp products, scarves, all over the world: India, Nepal, Bali, Thailand, and 18 other countries. Those were the biggies: Vietnam, Guatemala, Ecuador, Turkey, fabulous opportunity to go to places that, yeah, obviously not that I'd ever been before, but places that were just really off the map. Anywhere that I wanted to go at that particular time, I could go. And I learned that the borders really are sort of silly, that we do these passports to go from, one side of the street to the other. But the fact is that the people were the same on both sides. And everywhere I went, nobody really liked their government. That was the universal. Along with that, people are just people. And I remember being in Nepal one time and watching the women in India too. Have you ever been to India or this
have
part
not.
of the world?
I have always wanted to go, but have not had the opportunity yet.
Okay. So what you see is that the women get out there in the morning and they sweep their dirt, the dirt outside their house, and they water it down with water. They put water on it to to get the dust out, and then they sweep. And the fact is it's just dirt roads, it's dirt streets, and it's just as dirty at the end as it was. Maybe things are brushed away, but in that moment of watching that pure maternal, nurturing quality, the thought came that this is really the purpose of governments, not to get stuck on governments here, but the purpose of governments is to make it so that people can educate their kids and have their food and keep their streets clean and keep their house clean and to take care of them. This seemed to me to be the value of governments, and the other things have become kind of the main thing. The manipulations and the controls and all the other stuff. I don't want to get into governments, but it was just this idea of this simple Nepalese families and ladies. It was so pure and so beautiful. My experience overseas. I had the opportunity to spend winters in the last time I was in India was 7 months. I had a chance to spend many winters in India and some in Thailand, and traveling before that when I was doing the business, having a chance to travel all over the world. It was wonderful. But the fact is I'm not really missing it right now. Now I don't travel. I hardly leave the house, and it's okay.
Right.
Thank God.
Yeah. Better than the alternative.
The alternative is of wanting it to be different than it is. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That craving for things to be different than they are. That'll get you in trouble every time. So you do some work with the Enneagram?
Absolutely. Yeah. In 99, at this turning point of my life, a new friend had suggested to me that I might enjoy the Enneagram. So I went to take an Enneagram workshop one weekend. And in the middle of that workshop, the thought occurred to me that this reminds me a lot of astrology. And so I ended up finding perhaps the only person in the world who has a working system of how to integrate Enneagram, how Enneagram integrates into astrology. And he taught me how to see people's Enneagrams in astrological terms.
Huh. And how do you go about doing that? That seems like such a strange concept to me.
Well, the Enneagram is based on 9. Astrology is based on 12. Are they the same or different? Well, they're both mathematical frequencies. They're just slightly different frequencies, and so they have a lot in common. The 12 signs of the astrology, 12 houses, and you've got 9 types, and so it's actually rather similar. The way that it works is that each of the Enneagram points, and if people don't know, the Enneagram is a 9-sided figure. There are 9 archetypes. There are 9 personality stories that, on a psychological level, are the 9 personality types. But on a spiritual level, these are the 9 stories that we then that exist. And once we know our story, our core story, then we can wake up from that story, because it'll take us back to the moment. The teaching's about 60 years old, And so each of the Enneagram points has 4 or 5 different markers. For example, nines and ones are anger types, but they are not pronounced in that their anger is held back. It's recessed. And so one marker for them, for both nines and ones, is they would have Mars in the 12th house. So Mars is the planet of anger. The 12th house is a transition house. It's an ethereal house. And so planets that are there tend to be ethereal. I use the image of up here. Wow. And so their anger, their doing, is held back. It's ethereal level, and it's really hard for them to bring it into the physical plane. And that's for nines who are peacemakers, who want to hold back their anger because they don't want to upset anybody. They want to keep harmony. And for the ones who have trouble expressing their anger, this is represented by Mars in the 12th house. That's just one small example. But each of the types might have 4 or 5 different characteristics. Again, for a 9, they might have a sun with other planets, so they can't find themselves, and that's why they merge with other people, is because they don't really know who they are. All the other types, 1 through 8, know themselves pretty well, but the 9 story is such that it's hard for them to find themselves. And so then we find the sun is a little hidden, it's a little afflicted, and it's hard for them to find it. So that's sort of a quick version of how it works.
Interesting. That's super fascinating. Yeah, I've taken an Enneagram test a few years ago, and when I got the results and actually read the description of my result, I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this is so accurate. It was fascinating. And I've been really, really taken aback by just how accurate it was. And I've been super interested in the Enneagram ever since. And I've given the test to multiple people, and they were all like, wow, this is so accurate. It's right. Unbelievable how accurate it was. Incidentally, I am a 4.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That was the question I was trying to get in. Okay. So a 4. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm the artist, I guess.
Yeah,
what I classify it as. But yeah, like I said, the description of the characteristics of the artist, and just, I mean, even back to just my childhood and my upbringing, it was like, wow, this is so spot on. There's got to be some validity to this. So it was interesting for me to hear how it correlates to the astrological chart, which, if you're interested in my astrological chart, I'm a Cancer Sun, Virgo Moon, Leo rising. So,
okay. So the thing is that I use Vedic astrology. That okay. I'm more interested in the sidereal chart than the tropical chart. I find that this.
See, I don't know what the difference between those is.
Okay, so the Western astrology is based on tropical time. The chart is cast on tropical time. That's the relationship between the Earth and the Sun, and the Earth and the sun's relationship is the seasons. And so March 21st is Aries 1 every year. It's Aries 0 every year. That's a fixed relationship. But in Vedic astrology, we so we're on the Earth, and then we look towards the sun, and then we look at the sky behind the sun, and that changes every year. And so it's on a 26,000 year cycle called the precession of the equinox. And so around 500 AD, these two systems were the same, but they're now 24 degrees apart. And so I forget what you just said. There was a Leo in there. That Leo is now probably in Cancer because it moves backwards. And so the chart is similar. I mean, the 12 signs. Right. Between Vedic, which is Indian astrology, and Western astrology, but we cast the chart 24 degrees backwards, and I find that it has, what I like to say is it has a different frequency, the chart, and it's excellent for, I can't see Enneagrams in tropical, but I can see it in Vedic, and the Vedic chart, I like to think of it as more accurate, though I don't want to get into an argument about that. But the idea being is that it enunciates very clearly the issues confronting people, the issues confronting people's waking up. I had a client fairly recently that I remember that she was a Western astrologer, if I remember correctly. These things get kind of hazy, but in her Vedic chart, she had a stellium in the fourth house. That was, a stellium is 3 planets or more. She had 4 planets in the fourth house, and it was really the core of her whole story. But it didn't show up that way in her tropical chart. Some of those planets were in the 5th house rather than the 4th house. And so the 4th house was tropical was 2 in the 5th house and 3 in the 4th house, but one of them was the south node. And then in sidereal, it showed 4 planets in the 4th house, and then that south node moved over to the 3rd house. The point being that it was really her story that she could relate to completely, but she never saw it as in her tropical astrology. She never realized that this is what was going on. And so when I work with people and I do their chart and I recognize these things, it really gives people something to work on. It's very concrete as to what's going on and what they need to do up. That there was I don't remember the specifics of her chart. I could be confusing people, but it could have been that the sun was in there and it was cuspy. And so the cuspy sun is at the edge. And so she's not so sure of herself. And then she's got these 3 other planets and they all go up together and they all go down together. And so it was really, when you pick her situation up by this particular thread, it's a whole different story. And it gives her some very clear directions for her to be able to work with.
See, that's just fascinating. Like, I had no idea there was such a difference between the Vedic charts and the tropical chart. That's crazy. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well,
yeah.
I want to say to you that this is the most important. What I've described here is this tropical sidereal and the precession of the equinox is the most important part of either astrologies, and it's also the most difficult for people to understand. And most Western astrologers don't understand. They just cast the chart the way they're told to cast the chart. They don't really understand that it is tropical. And so I like to say that it's more limited because it's the relationship between the sun and the earth, which admittedly is a big relationship, but it's more limited than if you take the sky behind the sun into account. Then you've got a much deeper connection that you're trying to make, because it has more that is taking into account that is coming into. And so, I have to laugh when everybody gets upset because, hold on, it's full moon in Leo. The chances are is that the moon is actually in Cancer, and everybody's getting uptight about something that isn't actually real. And to take a slight step further, that what's happened is that the definition of the signs have changed, because the Western astrologer says it's Leo, but they see we usually work it with Virgo. They see Virgo. They think it's Virgo, but they see the characteristics of Leo, and so the Virgo was the Virgin. It's the Virgo is a Earth mutable sign, and it used to be it's like the the pictures of Woodstock, the young ladies dancing. That's the Virgo goddess in its natural form, but it's become this anal, detail oriented. That's because Leo is a fixed sign. And so the Virgo people are actually in Leo, and they've recognized the fixedness of Leo, and they have now attributed that to Virgo. This is a particular burr in my thorn in my bun, that this is what's happening. And most people don't care, which is fine with me. I'm a bit of I don't know if it's a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole, but the fact is that I can't get either the Enneagram industry, the Enneagram community, or the astrology community interested in the other modality, and that's okay because the clients are interested in it. The fact is that I'm not, what I do isn't for everybody. What I'm interested in isn't necessarily for everybody, and the divine sends to me the people that that I can help and touch, and that's a beautiful system. It doesn't need to be any different.
Hey, if it's working, right? So you said Vedic astrology, you said that originates in India?
Yes.
Interesting. And what time period did that start at? That's got to be pretty ancient, right?
Well, so let me go into it a little further. So Vedic astrology is actually a marketing term that was made up in the 80s, in the 1980s. Okay. It's actually Indian astrology. So we had some really sharp Westerners, Americans mainly, go in India starting in the 60s, and they got together in the 80s and they said, how are we going to bring this astrology to America? And they said, well, we need a catchy title. So they decided to call it Vedic astrology. Now, the kicker is that there is no astrology in the Vedas. Okay, there is mention.
All right, there
is mention of the nakshatras, which are the moon zodiac, the 27 nakshatras. There's mentions that, and the planets may be mentioned, but some of this, Pluto is this, and Moon is this, and you're stuck if you're that, and none of that is in the Vedas. That's all from Kali Yuga, which is the densest age. The Kali Yuga, in India, there are 4 ages, and Kali Yuga being the most dense age. And so a lot of these rules have come in as we came into the dense time, that the understanding of the, how should I say it, the intuitiveness, the purity of the modalities has been watered down in the dense age by lots of rules and expectations and way things should be. Even the caste system, which is easy to think about in India, to think about it as a very barbaric strategy, actually has roots as a higher teaching, that everybody has a level that they work at, is actually can be seen as a higher teaching. But the fact that you're kind of stuck in that is kind of what it morphed into, and that's a lower vibration. And so astrology has been maligned for thousands of years and has been stuck in really some small thinking.
That's what it seems like anyway, for sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. Based on your travels, I just have a question, because it's kind of been on my mind since we were talking about, your time in Nepal and your time in India. Comparatively, spirituality, say in India and Nepal and the other places you've traveled, versus not just limited to Eastern countries by any means, but just out of your travels, how differently is spirituality viewed in the United States versus in the other countries that you've traveled to?
Well, that's a good question. I think what it's moving, it's sort of merging into the same, that the West had materialism and the East had spirituality, and the West wanted spirituality, so it's borrowed that from India, and India wanted materialism and it's borrowed that from India, from the West. And so I've been on trains in India and arguing with people, and I'm taking the spiritual side and they're taking the material side. And so I think what's happened is it's a one world, that if I say to a client, I might use as an example, and they say, oh, well, the world isn't changing. And I say, well, 50 years ago, we didn't have yoga studios in every corner. Now, how many yoga studios do you have you're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Within 5 or 10 miles, how many yoga studios do you think you might have there?
Enough.
Enough. Okay. So this is happening all over the world. This isn't just Florida. This isn't California. This is all over the world that in Rishikesh in India, that people would come from all over the world. When I first started going to Rishikesh, it was older people and people who had sort of been seekers and had kind of worked up to landing in Rishikesh. But then it became about 10 years ago or so, it became that young people, that they had no idea where they were at. I met people, they were having a month in India and they come to Rishikesh first, and then they say, oh, well, we're leaving tomorrow and we're going to do 29 cities in 30 days. And I say, well, good luck, dear one, but you've come to the best. This is the best place. Right, you're leaving, they say, oh, well, India is so peaceful and it's so green and it's beautiful. It's like, well, not when you leave here. And so people came there. People have been coming there, young people, early 20s, 30s, that didn't really know anything. Muji, if you've ever heard of Muji, he's a teacher that's come along, and he's young people and on the internet, and he started coming. He had 2,000 people in Rishikesh after a couple of years, and these were people had never been to Rishikesh before, that he had drawn to India, and so they didn't have any of the roots about working your way up to it. It's like the major leaguer who spent 5 years paying their dues in the minor leagues, and then the phenom, he completely misses all of that, and so they dropped into something, and not to say that it was wrong for them to drop into it. They had the karma to be able to drop into it, but they didn't have the experience of working up to it and being a devotee for so many years and learning about different paths and then working up to that. And it's like their first experience is, I heard Muji was cool, so here I am. What is this place? And that's happening all over the world. It's immature to think that to go to a country and think. I remember I went to Ethiopia. I had a chance to go to Ethiopia. I had read about actually, not that I was so much into. I went to Jamaica because they had some handicrafts and I wanted to see what that was about. And so I went to the Bob Marley Museum, but they wanted $20, so I didn't go in. But I kind of got into that a little bit, not that I was particularly interested in it, but in reading about all that, I read about that they had a connection with Ethiopia, that they had considered Haile Selassie, who was the dictator of Ethiopia. Rita Marley had said that she saw that he had the stigmata in his hand in Ethiopia. And so Ethiopia had given land to the, I forget the name of their group. I was thinking the Rosicrucians, but that's not the name of the group.
Rastafarians.
Rastafarians, yeah, it's kind of close. The Rastafarians, they had given a land there that they had built a community. And one thing or another, as the 7 in the Enneagram, I didn't need much reason, but I thought, oh, that's a kind of a neat place to go. So I decided to go. Not that I did any of this seeking out. It was just a way to get there. So when I got there, I thought, oh my God, this reminds me of Haiti, which I'd been at, which was a difficult place to be. Haiti next to Jamaica, and I realized by the end that it wasn't that it had never gotten to Ethiopia; it had already been there for millions of years. That they had a museum to Lucy, the first person, and I looked at the people, and they were had such wisdom, and the ladies were dressed in their heels and beautiful, and how should I call it? So knowledgeable and stoic, just stoic, but in a very beautiful way. And so when you read, I forget the guy's name of the book that had talked about the Hancock. If you read his books, and so they had the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, so they had the Ark of the Covenant, and they were in Egypt, and so they said, "Well, where are we going to put the Ark of the Covenant?"
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
they just so where did they decide to put it? They decided to that let's
The,
go up the Nile.
the story is
Go
Ethiopia.
ahead.
Yeah, the story
Yeah,
is that it's a, and I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, and it's fascinating that, that story, first of all, is fascinating. And the guards that get the cataracts, and like everybody that guards this church where the Ark of the
yeah,
Covenant is
right,
supposedly out.
yeah.
It's just fascinating to me. But anyway, go on. Yeah. So I'm familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay, so but the idea is that why Ethiopia is because it's the headwaters of the Nile. That they looked at the Nile and they said, let's put it in the headwaters. And they went into the highland in Ethiopia, which I never got to. I only went to Addis Ababa.
Okay.
And that was okay. If I went back, I would go to the highlands and visit these places because they sounded absolutely fascinating. But to say, to sit here and say, oh my God, they're savages,
Right.
ridiculous, they're so far vibrationally so far beyond what we can understand, and they've been that way for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like they probably have some things figured out pretty well by now.
Yes, it's just that materially they haven't done as well, they don't, and it could be that they just that they don't focus on that, and God bless them for that. God
Right.
bless them.
Yeah.
What a teacher that is.
Right. Yeah. They just don't concern themselves with materialism.
Well, I don't want to label. I don't want anybody to label me that I'm saying that, but I'm just saying is that they haven't had the same opportunities that and maybe they didn't want them. That the cultures are so old.
Right.
That it's the Ethiopia, I believe, is the oldest Christian country in the world or something, separate from somewhere, Rome, Italy, or something. But it's done in a different way. It's the temples are different, and the art is very, very different. Their 16th century art was almost primitive with dots. It's beautiful, really kind of fun, and very, very different. And it was very awakening being there. And my point is that every place is like that, man. Cambodia with the killing fields and all this stuff that they've been through, and Vietnam with I always talked about the street people would sell books, and they'd say, well, where are you from? And you'd say American. They'd say America #1, and I'd say that's incredible. We had a war with them 50 years ago, and they've taken on capitalism. And I like to say in the US, we haven't resolved our civil war from 150 years ago, and here they are saying America #1. Again, that's a teacher. If you go in there with the ugly American, it's not only Americans, but if you go in there with this ugly American attitude that who are these people, then you never leave the hotels. You never leave the marble of the hotels. You can be in a country and you can not touch it, but to touch it is an incredibly deep experience. And I'm very blessed to have been able to travel so extensively for many years to I guess satisfy a lot of some desires that I had. It wasn't particularly any particular place in common in particular, but it was ability to be able to. I had the freedom to be able to travel. It was fabulous years, and I also got tired of it. It wasn't so much that I got older, but it was what I did. But the fact was that I just didn't want that pace anymore. And the fact was that I had this other thing that I wanted to do. And the other thing was that I really wanted to do my whole life, which is I wanted to be able to do these readings for people. And I needed to wait. I wanted to express to people that I waited for a long time. I like to say that I just had my first major astrology article printed, 5,000 words, at 75 years old.
Wow.
It was released about a week or 10 days ago, and I have had no response on it. And it doesn't matter. It isn't about
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It's still over people's heads, and that's okay. That if it's not in my time, it's okay. It's not what it has. It's not necessarily what it has to be here for. What it's here for is for me,
Right.
and I can influence people through what comes through me, and that's enough. It doesn't have to. The recognition isn't. It does not seem to be my particular story, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of secondary to the act itself. I mean, it'd be nice to be, it's kind of, that's the way I view this podcast as well. It's like, do I, for sure, I would love, for everyone to listen to it. I would love for it to be sweepingly popular, but like if if it's not, then it's just not. But I'm not really doing it for that purpose. I'm doing it for my benefit, because I gain so much just from doing it, from talking to people like yourself. And, everybody else that I've talked to, because I learned something from everyone that I speak with. So it's really just, it goes back to what we were talking about before. It's like, yeah, I know that I don't know all that I should. And this is an interesting way for me to open myself up to knowledge that I don't have previously.
Yes. And then the kicker is that, so the Facebook meme is, how do I change the world? Well, I change myself. And so by you're doing it and your peace with that, that is the teacher. It isn't necessarily that we have the karma to be instantly popular. But the fact is that by doing what we do, we still touch people in a way that that people say their attitude is beautiful, and we may or may not know that we're touching people. It doesn't, like you say, it doesn't really matter. What it matters is that that I'm learning my lessons, that I'm expressing my growth and growing from that at what level, without needing to take a quantifying on it. Am I at 46? Am I at 57? Am I at 83? And what is the scale?
Right.
I mean, I'm just here today. It's a Thursday. I'm here today, and life is good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You earlier, you had mentioned you lived in a spiritual or like a spiritual community for, you said, about 20 years.
20 years. Absolutely.
Where was that?
Well, that was near where I am in California, and was started in the late 60s. There was a back to the land movement and communities, and it was seen as a way. It's expressed as a community, but it was really an ashram. And the idea that communities, which was a big push in the late 60s and early 70s for communities, is people living together and people supporting each other and living together, that we don't have to, a young woman, a client said to me a couple days ago, I may never be able to buy land, buy a house, own a house, because she's in New Zealand now, and there's less houses and people are living in motels. Well, we have that here too. This is part of the world. We're running out of homes. But the fact is, so there are people with money that don't have enough energy, and there are people with energy with not enough money, and so people get together and build community. And so I was very interested in community at the time, and the spiritual community devoted to Yogananda, it was a natural. I lived there for 20 years, and within, when my kids grew, we had 3 kids. It seemed like all at the same time. It just sort of, I call it, I graduated. It was just time to do something else. It was time to express something else. And I've come to see community as all over the world, that we're in community wherever we are, that a community like that can put up walls, because if you say, not necessarily them, but anybody, if you say, this is my community,
Right.
but now this isn't my community,
Right.
now you've put up a barrier.
No.
Yeah. So I don't really believe in that anymore. And so I'm not really so much into living in community. We've tried that here where we bought a land with, I have a new wife, which not so new, but a new wife. We met in India 15 years ago, and the only way we could live together, she's Dutch. The only way we could live together was to get married and to do it here. Because in Holland, I'd have to learn how the Dutch, which ain't gonna happen. So she was happy to move here. But the point is that I don't miss community in that sense, because I just think of all of it as community. I don't think of any barriers. This is what the traveling did, is that all you're doing is shuffling passports, but you're not really, you can call it a different country, but it's not. I mean, I remember reading Lonely Planets. By the way, I've got a heck of a Lonely Planet collection, but I remember being on a bus in Malaysia about to go to Singapore, which is, I believe, connected. It may be there's a bridge, but it's there. You go through a toll booth, and then you're in Singapore. And the Malaysians and the Singaporeans don't get along. What a surprise! They're neighbors. Historically, they don't get along. It's the same stuff you read everywhere. That, for whatever reason, one had and one didn't have, and they didn't get along. So I just sort of, just roll my eyes, and here we are again. This is the human condition.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you, for you, I'm just asking Indra Rinzler, what gives your life meaning? How do you find meaning?
Meaning. Let's see. What is meaning? Meaning. I think it's the small things that give it meaning. I think that I like to say with my wife and I, we do small things. We're not, romantic, but the way she buys the groceries, she likes to go buy the groceries. And I don't mind not doing that. She's very detail oriented, and she likes what she likes. And so I could never figure it out. So I'm happy that she does that. But the way that she makes my lentil soup, if it's a lentil soup time, or she'll cook up the beans, it's just incredible. It's not that there's a bouquet on it. It's not that there's a sticky with a heart on it. It's certainly not her. But what gives it meaning is that it has such a depth to it. And I'll tell this story that we're 4 years into being together, knowing each other, living in different countries, not together in India at that time, and maybe she would travel here for 3 months, but we had a lot of time apart. But anyways, we're 4 years into the relationship, and as a Dutch person in Europe, they like fresh bread. She told me in France there's a difference between morning bread and afternoon bread. Okay, they really, you got to get afternoon bread in the afternoon. You like fresh bread. So in India, they'd make these beautiful loaves of whole wheat bread. And I had bought a toaster. We had trunks, and we could keep stuff year to year in India. So I had a toaster. And so we had a new loaf of bread. 4 years in, she says, well, I'll take the end piece because you don't like it. And I said to her, what do you mean I don't like it? And she says, well, you never take it. I said, well, I'm happy with the stale other end. You like the fresh bread. So I give you the fresh end. And she said, oh.
That's funny. That's a good one.
So to me, the meaning is small things, is the the joy of remembering a kid's birthday, even if you don't see them or even connect, your team winning, and you're on top of the hill, the leaves fall, the leaves fall, and it saves the tree, because the trees would die in the winter when it's freezing cold, and then they fertilize the tree when they dissolve, when they decompose, and they feed the tree. This is a system. This is an incredible system. This is what gives me meaning.
Yeah. think that's a good answer. I think that's a really good answer, actually. I certainly would agree with that. I mean, it's definitely about the little things. It's, it's about the connections you have with people. It's about, personal relationships, meaningful life experiences. Like that's what makes, that's what's meaningful for me. It's not all the stuff I can accumulate or the accolades I can get. Now that stuff's nice, I mean, for sure. It's nice to have things and it's nice to have recognition like we were talking about earlier. But ultimately it's, it's just about being, I don't even want to say happy because happy is a lofty goal, but content, just contentment, just being okay with the present moment, just the way it is. Because I think if you strive for happiness, like if your ultimate goal is happiness, you're probably setting yourself up for failure a lot of time because as we were talking about, life's got a lot of suffering in it. So not to say that there's not moments of joy because there is, but like if that is your ultimate goal is to just be in this state of ultimate happiness and elation all the time, you're probably going to be let down. So like contentment is just, that's what I focus on. Just being like, I'm okay.
Well, I'm feeling to go back to what you said before. If you're a 4 in the Enneagram, then the sadness, and the 4s can ring that sadness and make it write a treatise on it, that they bring it, they take it to a high form, that the rest of us, we just get blindly drunk and say the heck with it, and kick garbage cans and kick our tires and stuff. But the 4s, they see the beauty in it, and it's a life form that they don't need the happiness that they're able to feel the sensitivity of whether it's happiness or sadness. They can feel it. They can feel it in their bodies. They react from that, and it's beautiful. I like to say that the way that 4s handle adjectives is incredible. Nobody else in Facebook world, you can tell it's a 4 just with the use of adjectives and the flowy expressions and the creativity. It's incredible, and you teach us. That's what you teach us. You have the opportunity. You as a 4, not you, but you as a 4s. They suffer because they feel everything, but in that suffering and feeling everything, they teach us about feeling.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like to feel like it's like happiness and sadness are like at the kind of the same, like say you're in a valley and like that's your baseline, and happiness and sadness are both peaks on the opposite sides of the valley. It's like, they're not really like, it's kind of like the Tao, they're not synonymous. They're not, I didn't mean synonymous. I meant, they're not mutually exclusive. Like they're both on the same level of the scale. Like, and they're both kind of almost equal emotions, like happiness and sadness. It's like we as people and human beings, we're just so apt to push away sadness because we just want to be happy all the time. We cling to pleasure and we cling to joy because we don't want to feel pain. But pain is just such a integral part of the human experience. Like if you're just pushing away pain all the time, you're not getting the full human experience. And, I think that's what sets people up for failure all the time, is that constant chasing the next bit of happy. They're always chasing the next vacation or the next thing they can do to make themselves ecstatic. And it's like, well, let's just work on being all right, like every day. If we could just be okay every day, my thing is like creating a life that I don't need a vacation from. It's like, I don't necessarily want to like plan a vacation every year and have like, well, I look forward to this 1 week every year and the other 51 weeks are just a wash. Like, now let's make all 52 weeks so good that we don't need that 1 week a year to escape. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I want to go back to what you just said is that this is what the 4 teaches, is that that the happiness and the sadness are both peaks. I'm going back to Bob Dylan, the ultimate 4 there, the answer is blowing in the wind, what's 8 words that express, that are mystical, but yet express everything, in 1962 or 3 when he wrote the song.
Yeah.
It was way over people's heads. We're now 50, 60 years later. The answer is blowing in the wind. it's incredible. That's the beauty of the four. And this to me, this gives meaning to life, is that each of the Enneagram points has a teaching like that. This is fours. It's unique to fours, but the other points will have their own sophistication of what they can teach. The fives, the ability to be able to understand things. I sat with a five in Rishikesh one time, and I was teasing him, and I said, well, how did they make this bridge? There's a walking bridges that cross the Ganges River there that we walk over, many times a day. I said, well, I wonder how they built the bridge. And the five says to me, oh, well, here's how they built it. He knew, he knew how they built the bridge. I was just sort of teasing, but he because they need information in order to feel secure, that they have that information, and they seek the information, and there's meaning, while it's icky to be in that story and to be stuck with, I don't know enough and I don't feel secure because I don't know enough. It's a really icky story. It's not any better than sitting in depression at a 4 or at a 9. I mean, it's not any better than that. It's just their version of it. But each one of us has a uniqueness. I love the different charts. Recently I've had, all on one side, all. I had recently 9 planets and 9 houses. I don't think I'd had that before. A person I'd known 40 years, 9 planets and 9 houses. And just to see the different expressions and how they manifest, it's really incredible.
Yeah. Wow. 9 planets and 9 houses. I don't think I've seen that one before. That's
yes. It's probably rather rare. I think I've had 8 and 9. I think one time a friend of mine told me that he had seen someone with 8 planets in one house.
Oh, wow.
which is a hard path.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine.
What can I say to people? There's people that have very unique challenges, and the thing is that why do they have that? So what I've ended up coming with, being a positive outlook type, that's what when they can figure that out, that's what they're here to teach.
Right.
That the point of these challenges is that's what you're here to teach. And so your happiness peak and your sadness peak, you're here to teach people that they're both beautiful, that then one's not better than the other. It's only conditioning that says that one's better than the other.
Right. Yeah. They're both extremes of the human experience. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And they can be fun. They're both fun places to visit, but you can't live at the top of a mountain. The air gets real thin up there.
Well, I mean, there's people living at the top of the mountain. So
yeah, I meant the metaphor, the metaphysical mountain.
No, I understand, but there are people. There are people that are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately for them, because I've lived. I mean, like I said, they're nice places to visit, but you don't want to live at the top of the sadness peak all the time. And I don't.
Well,
I don't think you can. I think, like I said, they're not mutually exclusive. You can't have one without the other, but I think you have to visit both of them occasionally to know that the other one even exists.
Well, I totally agree with you there. I didn't realize you were talking about the sadness mountain, but I was thinking of people living at the top of the mountain and being completely outside society, that they live in a place where their world is just in front of them, and what's in front of them. And I met a woman in India, a very famous woman who lived in a cave. She was a Buddhist monk. She's British. And she wrote a book, A Cave in the Snow. She lived in seclusion for 12 years.
Oh, really? Huh. I'm going to have to look that one up as well. Cave in the
Snow. Yeah, she's Buddhist. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that one out. That sounds like a good read. Sounds like a really good read. Hey, man, so I got one other question for you. If you had one bit of advice to give to people about, like, say, like living a more fulfilled life, just living I don't, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the term happier life, because happy is a lofty goal, but just content. like if you had one bit of advice, what would you say to people?
Oh boy, hard question. I mean, the advice would change for the different people, but one bit of advice is love yourself. It could be to realize that you don't know anything or everything. We already talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
To be humble, to be accepting of other people, to be let go of arrogance, that we know something. Happiness can come from one bit of advice. Listen to other people, watch and observe. Maybe to observe your life. That's not one, but those would be.
I think it's good advice, though.
Those are some of the ones that I might say to people, depending on what the situation is to be to be patient. That may not work for everybody, but sometimes you have to be patient and understand that things happen in their own way at their own time.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of let things happen as they're going to happen. Let the universe do its thing.
That is the better way. Yeah. That's the better way, is to relax.
Well, yeah. I mean, they talk about that in the Tao Te Ching a lot, is, just letting things flow according to nature and not trying to control things as much as we as humans like to try to do.
I had a teacher's his one was learn to behave.
Hey, that's a good one. And one that I think a lot of people need to learn still. I'm just now learning that one myself.
Whatever behave means, right. Learn to behave.
Whatever your definition of that is.
Yeah.
Because if you're going against your definition of it, you're probably misbehaving. if you're even going, like, if you're even saying to yourself, like, man, I really got to stop doing this, like, you probably get it together. Hey, so I got one more quick question. Where can I find you said you just published your first paper.
So it's in an astrology magazine, and I think you have to be a member of the organization to yeah.
I was interested to read it, but I'll have to try.
Well, I can send it. I'd be happy to send it to you.
I would love to read it. I would absolutely love to read it. And where
can people do that?
Where can people find you at if they wanted to get in touch?
So I have an email address that's good. I have a website. That's probably the best place.
Okay.
IndraRinzler.com.
Easy enough.
The website, I'm kind of big on Facebook. So that's Indra Rinzler. I've got a two of them. One's a public, because that's the only way. You got to have a public in order to do the ads.
Right.
So I have that, and that's small. And I do post most of the things I post over there too. But I have a regular page that's got a lot of people on it that come see me there. And to anybody who's interested, I have a free offer of if you write me, I'll send you your Vedic chart and a little bit of an explanation on how to read it.
Nice.
So just send me, I need birth, time, date, and place. Send it to my email, indrarinzler@gmail.com.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that. And I'm sure you'll probably get some emails. So.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful. I would hope so, happy to do that.
Well, hey, thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been super fascinating.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Justin, for having me today. And we'll just keep on-ing here, huh?
Absolutely. Big thanks again to Indra Rinzler for being on the show. If you want to get in touch with him, he can be found at indrarinzler.com. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed the show, the best way to support it is to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you for listening. This has been Dharma Junkie. Namaste.